Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a very exciting episode of Fanzone Debate. We are in the middle of our tournament that is currently going on, and this one I'm very excited for because we have the return of not only the number 2 seed, Cameron Holzwomann, but the number 7 seed who hasn't played in a hot minute. It's Brian Michaels. Brian has been on the judging side, basically being more or less a co-showrunner for a while, a Fanzone Debate with me, which has been great. But he's back to play. I love to see it. But Cameron's been on a tear. He's challenged for a title and played very, very well in said title match, with a great record of 6-3. And he's going up against Brian, who, you know, it's been a while since we've seen Brian, but he played very well when he kicked off his debate career before he said peace out for a little while. So he's back. It's going to be very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. And we got a great set of judges here with us today. We got the current champion, Cody Newberry, and Mark Menchaca. Cody, we're going to start with you. Your thoughts on Cameron versus Brian.
So Brian, I'm very excited to see debate. He has handed me my belt and tried to prevent me from having it with his board before. So it's exciting to see him actually in the ring. I think he's really good. I actually, like, no shot to Cameron, I hope he is like one of the people at the end of this so I get to actually play, because he's got so much film knowledge and he's very creative on how he delivers stuff. Like, he'll probably do the self-deprecating, like, Cam beat me, but like, I really think he can win the whole thing. He's got that. I played Cam for the belt. Like, Cam has got enough to be at the end and play, even though every time Cam wins, he's like, oh, I didn't prep and I didn't care and I'm here and blah, blah. But he does enough to show up and win. So depending on what they pick and how they can handle counter punches will decide this. But is this round one of the tournament or round two?
Yes. Round one.
This is crazy. Like, this round one, that's a crazy round one match. So this tournament's stacked. So I'm excited to see it.
Mark, you've been here for all the matches so far in the tournament. You're here now for this one. Your thoughts about Cameron going up against Brian?
Oh yeah, that should be fun. I would not been around. I came in I guess after Brian had stopped debating for a while, so I'm not really not familiar with it. So it'd be fun to watch him. Cameron, he won a tear last year, contended for the belt. It was good. Yeah, he won the tournament last year. It's a solid tournament win there. He always brings some good stuff here. So yeah, it should be a good one.
Yeah, the last time Brian debated, I was in 2 homes ago, which is weird to think about. It was a while ago. It's been a minute, but I'm looking forward to this. Let's see what happens as we bring in. We'll start with Mr. Brian Michaels. Brian, you're back. Normally we have you on the other side of this, on the judges side, but you're here today to be on the playing side, and you know the game really well. I think you have a lot of movie knowledge. Are you excited to be back, first of all, and your thoughts on going up against Cameron?
I am glad to be back because I have fun debating, and you know, when I did it before, I think I only had 3, maybe 4 debates in my first run. And basically I stopped doing it because I was in the middle of also the grind of, you know, doing trivia at the same time. But now I'm out of that. You know, I don't have this kind of time constraints and things, so I have more time to just have fun with stuff like this. It was kind of, you know, as I judged, I got the itch more and more. You know, I wanted to jump in and, you know, be a part of it. To come back and play my first match against somebody who's played for the title, a little rough, but who cares? It'll be fun.
I asked you if you wanted to come back.
Oh no, I wasn't complaining.
No, I know. I'm just kidding.
Just saying it's a tough.
I remember Nick told me what the layout would be, and I was like, "Fuck!" And so I messaged Brian. I'm like, "Okay, so you can play, but you're probably going to be like the 7 seed." And he's like, "I'm in." But no, I'm very excited.
My last run started with a person who I shut out every vote on every question, so this time it will be a little bit different.
That's probably fair. Probably true. Let's get into the next player. We got Cameron Holzwomann here. Cameron, Amanda Hug and Kiss. Cameron, how are you doing? You're going up against Brian. So Brian hasn't played in a while, but has been around the game in a map, probably other than me, the most in the last 2 years or so. So does that intimidate you at all? Or are you just excited to get here and talk about movies?
Yeah, Brian is someone who, like, you set up this match, and it was not until like a solid week after this got set up that I realized this was like a tournament. I just thought this was another match. But then I learned it was a tournament. I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, learning that Brian like has played a truly perfect game in Fanzone and has one of the highest vote getting percentages in this game, it was a scary thing when looking into it. But yeah, Brian.
Watched the debate. It wasn't that hard.
Yeah, but he's been around. He's been judging. Brian has been nice enough to, in multiple Fanzone matches, write only my name and not my opponent's. Unfortunately, I don't have him here to do that for me. I will never forget in me v Andrew Barr in last year's tournament, where every single round he was like, "Barr, I swear I don't hate you," but it's Holzwomann again. So we'll see how it goes. But no, it's very interesting because like Brian and I we're very different in some ways in like our film tastes, our film knowledges, but also we're very similar in where it's like, yeah, we both like musicals a lot and we both like stop motion animation a lot, apparently, which is the thing I didn't know until the strikes got picked for this. But it'll be an interesting one. I'm excited.
Yeah, I forgot about the Brian 100%, but it's real. I just went and looked, and Brian is 2-1, and his only losses against Nick, who I need that motherfucker back in debate ASAP because he's
Is he the only one to ever have a perfect?
That I
Bill
would have to
did
look into.
I think Bill did it once.
I
I was like, I haven't even. I know. I don't think me and
But I
Kirk
could
have
be-
done it.
But yeah, Brian did have 100%.
Entertainment.com.
Yeah, it was yeah, go on the 100%, and not to talk him up too much, but 8 points out of 7 of those were clean sweeps. So that's pretty nasty. So but again, as we've all stated, Cameron has proven himself in this league. So I'm excited to see this one. So let's get into it. This is how it's going to work. So we gave the players some questions based on categories that they drafted, and they are going to debate those questions tonight before our very souls. So each player will get 1 minute to open the debate. Then each player will debate in a 5-minute freeform scenario, followed by a 1-minute closing. At the end of that, Mark, Cody, and I will write on our handy dandy boards who we thought won the point. If you get 2 out of 3 votes, you win the point. First person to 3 points wins the match. Players, any questions as we get into the first question?
Nope.
All right, let's get into it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was it during Cameron Holtzman's match with Cody that this was created?
Yes.
I don't know, honestly.
Cameron says yes, so I'm happy about that.
I
forgot
about it, and then Jack wrote about it in an article for the
Oh,
blog.
so it's so good. It's so funny. All right, guys, your first question is coming from the category of epic adventures. This was drafted by Cameron. It is in the category, or it is in the category of epic adventures. The question is, what is the coolest character or creature design in a Chronicles of Narnia film? Cameron, because you drafted this, you are going to get to go first. You have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking. I will come in to give you a 10-second warning when the time comes.
I think it's very interesting to look for something cool in a franchise that inherently cool is not at the center of it. It is a Christian allegory using these fantasy worlds, everything like that. Where there is one being that stands above all else, in my opinion, in the Narnia franchise of being just cool, badass, and awesome. And that is the river god from Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. Towards the end of the film, this giant being made of pure water that symbolizes the rage of nature forms itself, not just as this amorphous blob, but as this being with real features with expressions, and is able to show just how terrifying it truly is able to intimidate and destroy the soldiers that are damming up the river, that are pissing it off, frankly. It is able to come in with such extreme power, extreme gravitas, this really cool, interesting visual design that is constantly kinetic, constantly moving, that has all these interesting defining features, and it makes just this really, really interesting image, this very big, imposing, and just awesome thing to behold and to be afraid of.
Time. Okay. We're going to move over to Brian. Brian, you now have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
All right. The coolest character design in a Narnia film, and honestly the only design worth discussing or remembering at all, is Jadis, aka the White Witch. It's not about how beautiful and extravagant she looks. So what makes her cool is how that look changes throughout the film, and why they change the look, and the way those changes convey the character and story. Her design is and look is what the designers refer to as a mood thermometer throughout the film. Early on, she appears beautiful and elegant in bright whites and a tall white crown, but as her powers weaken, her silhouette actually melts. The dresses become more bottom heavy, the crown shrinks, the colors turn smokier and grayer. They aren't just costumes, they're a metaphor for the character herself. The progression continues until finally she becomes the warrior at the battle. Her look is fierce and brutal. There's no longer a hint of femininity or softness. She's covered in furs, boasting her cruelty to animals. She wears Aslan's mane, essentially the scalp of her opponent, around her neck like a trophy. The creativity and thought that went into her design are impressive, and the results are pretty damn cool.
Okay. Ooh, the Andrew Barr move. So, guys, 5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking. I will throw up the 1 minute warning when that time comes, and I will throw out the let's move on if I feel like we're on a point too long. And if you're not letting your opponent talk, I will throw that up. Don't make me do that, or I will send Nick Tuig to your house. So 5 minutes when one of you starts.
First of all, tell me how this is any more creative than any other movie that had had a person made of water. To me, this doesn't seem any more impressive than like the T-1000's liquid metal.
Well, I think the thing is, it doesn't need to be doing something innovative. The question isn't most innovative. The question isn't most unique. The question is coolest. And I think at the end of the day, you want something cool, you want something badass. I want a stories tall being towering above everyone, instilling fear of them, made of the rage of the pure elements, coming down to inflict the wrath of nature upon the people who have attacked it. At the end of the day, the heavy lifting of the White Witch's character design, more than anything, is just that's Tilda Swinton. And it's not just Tilda Swinton, it's Tilda Swinton with dreadlocks at the very beginning. It's not cool, it's distracting, it doesn't fit the world. It's this weird asynchronous thing that doesn't really work.
I disagree completely, because I mean, you talk about how this water creature doesn't need to be unique, it doesn't need to be innovative, but the problem is we have seen it many times before, and things do seem less cool when you've seen them before. You're like, oh, we're just doing that again. And as far as Jadis, Tilda Swinton, great actress. She does a tremendous job in this movie. But what makes it cool is we are seeing something new. We're not just seeing, I mean, yes, they're beautiful costumes, and not just her costume, but her hair and her makeup and everything. It's a great look to her. But the fact that it was so innovative to take that look and have it tell a story, you know, the way that her dresses change, the way they treat her like an ice sculpture that's like, you know, melting as her powers go away, and the way it changes, it just brings something new that we have not seen done with characters before. And the design of it is just really cool.
I think that part of the problem though with it is the fact that like it's washed out by the things around it. At the very beginning, you have the White Witch, who's a pale white woman in a stark white outfit in a stark white background, and she doesn't really stand out. It's not the most visually distinct thing. As the world gets more warm, she's just dressed in gray. The things around her are really interesting. The war chariot pulled by polar bears, the magical sleigh pulled by reindeer. Those are the things that make her seem more interesting and more cool, but that's not her. That's not her design. That's just the things around her. The water god is this big, massive being. It has these distinct, interesting features where you could have these big forces like Galactus in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, where you take this evil force and make it just an amorphous blob with no interesting emotions. They took the time to give this thing eyebrows, to give it eyes, to give it the ability to express, and it makes it all the more interesting than some of these other nature spirits we've seen in other things.
Well, they've used running water as the hair and as the mustache and things like that. It's been done before. And as far as your colors, the colors of Jada's costume, the designers actually in a featurette on YouTube were talking about her design. And they talked about how that was quite intentional. At the beginning, it is white, it is pure. She does kind of blend in the background. She's part of the world because like Edmund is just kind of accepting her and kind of being attracted to her in this world. And as it goes on, she does tend to stand out more. She's not just blending in. They're seeing the true colors of the White Witch and how she is, and her colors do get more severe and she stands out more. And that is quite intentional. And because, like I said, it tells part of the story.
I think the thing that's being overlooked here is the fact that like there's something like as much as that costume grows and it changes, it never gets extremely exciting. It never gets to this extreme, this super interesting thing. It is this baseline of like, this is what I would expect an evil queen, an evil witch to look like. Of it's a woman with a crown, a coat, and a big stick. It is, oh, now she's losing her powers. It's a gray dress in a grayish looking area. Like it's never dynamic in the settings that it's in. It's just dynamic compared to itself, which in a way undercuts all the previous looks in a way.
It is dynamic in the settings it's in because there's actually 7 different looks within her that she goes through. There's like when she becomes when there's the executioner scene at the stone table, her look is midnight blue. She's got the black rooster on her shoulder. It looks very ritualistic, and it's not supposed to stand out. She's supposed to be in that world, and it expresses not only. It's not just a costume change, like, you know, in between scenes at the Oscars. It is a different version of her. It is her, how she is changing and how her emotions are getting to her, and what's going to happen in the movie.
I think the thing is, Jadis is not supposed to belong in the world of Narnia. The entire conceit of the series is she is an invader who is hostily taken over. She does not.
Which is why you start seeing her true colors as she stands out more.
But at the end of the day, like, she is constantly being undercut by the things around her and it distracts from it. Whereas the river god is this giant thing. It belongs. It showcases exactly what it needs to. It fits its purpose and it's badass when it does it.
Time. Okay, Brian, we are going to start with you. You get 1 minute when you start talking to close your argument.
Look, if all it takes is to make a design cool to you is to make person-shaped water, I guess I can't sway your mind. Even if the idea is cool, the execution of that design matters, and it was failed to be realized in any kind of interesting or new way. So it's an unsuccessful design. The first Narnia film is by far the best one, and it's largely because of Jadis the White Witch, who loomed over the film. Tilda did her usual great job, but the design of the character is what made her so memorable. The designers made her look a living thing that actually adapted to her moods and conveyed more about her than any dialogue. The very idea of her look melting and incorporating things like the shrinking crown and becoming more bottom heavy, like the ice sculpture melting, is pure genius. We were wowed not only by the cool looks, but by the message each of her iterations silently sent. Whether we noticed that it was doing this metaphor or not, subconsciously, it was conveying that message. And yes, her design looks cool. Her costumes look cool. But what makes it truly cool is to take that design and have it be integral to the story, to have it tell its own story, and not just be a forward VFX instruction like, say, Guy Made of Water.
Time. Okay. We're going to move over to Cameron. Cameron, 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
I think Brian is arguing a lot more for innovation than he is for something being cool. He is arguing that his thing does something different. It does something that transitions, that changes. At the end of the day, what is cool to me is something that you look at, you behold, and you think, holy shit, oh my God. And when you have a giant river spirit that starts as just a visible, living, rushing river and rises up out, becomes this giant towering statue, brings its wrath upon the people with its fists, brings its expressions with its eyes, not just striking fear with its sheer size, but with the way it is able to stare into the eyes of villains like Lord Sepespian. It makes it all the more interesting, all the more terrifying, and all the more awesome. It has constant motion. It is flowing. It is rushing. It is raging. You want to talk about something being conveyed? They don't do the lazy thing. They don't do the thing where it just sits there still. The water is constantly moving, constantly giving it this kinetic energy. Tilda Swinton's stuff goes unnoticed, goes undercut by other things around it. The execution of the water god works, and it time.
All right. Bring in the judges.
But
All right.
I would say this is far better than the other ones. At least not the second one. The third one.
What's up? What?
Brian said the first Narnia is far better than the other two. It's far better than the third one.
Third one's a piece of shit.
Second one's still
and
great.
I can say this legally now. I answered a question correctly about it in a Fandom Fights Teams match.
Does everyone have their votes written down?
What's that?
Does everyone have their votes written down?
Yes.
No, Mark's still right.
Oh wait, Mark doesn't.
Hey, hold on. It was.
He doesn't
and
have a
then-
board.
Yeah.
Did he just realize that he didn't have a board because he's in a hotel?
I mean, there's apps for everything, you know.
That's
I just want to say I've never seen any of these movies, so. Nope, it's written down. Can't change it.
You fooled the fuck out of me. I went with Brian Michaels. I thought that Cameron did a good job. I was waiting for Brian to be like, she's ice. That's cool. Do like an Arnold pun. But he didn't. I thought it was like right up Brian's alley. Cameron picked the better pick. When I think of what is cool. And Kirk hates when I do the what is the coolest question. I love them because it brings up this debate of like when you're thinking about it, what oh man, I thought that was so cool in that movie when the giant water god came out. But Brian really convinced me that like that is cool, but also like all this stuff that I never would have thought about with Jadis and the White Witch is really fucking cool. So I went with Brian, but it was a very different fight than I anticipated going into it. And I thought Cameron did a great job. Like his points and everything were great. I think he was at the top tier of his debate. It's not like he floundered or anything. I just thought it was Brian brought a different perspective to the fight than I anticipated. Mark, what does your phone say?
Yeah, this is probably, at least as far as I've been here, one of the closer fought Narnia fights that Cameron's had up to this point.
Oh, that Cameron's had. I thought that we had just had a ton of Narnia fights. Otherwise,
when I'm here. Remember when I could pick this as my non-fandom thing?
Yeah, I know, right? Fandom's just taking everything.
But yeah, I don't know, man. Like he did do it.
The suspense is killing me here.
oh my god, I'm losing my mind.
Lower your brightness.
I
think I see a
Brian.
Yeah, was it Brian? I don't know.
What do you mean? Is it? You wrote it.
Okay.
It's Brian.
It's Brian. It's Brian. It just won't say. It says Brian. Okay.
I saw Brian.
There's Brian. Okay.
They have an app for everything. You don't know how to use every one of them.
Mark, do you have a pen? Just run to the bathroom, grab some toilet paper.
Don't most hotels have a pen and paper pad?
Go ahead, Mark.
It's not here.
Sorry.
Anyway, I picked Brian. Okay. Yeah, Brian came up like a ton of things like I never really thought about with at least the White Witch and how like especially like how the design just kind of morphs into different aspects of the film. And I feel like even when Cameron kind of hit him with stuff, he was really good at defending it. I'm surprised. I'm surprised at least with this, and that's sort of why I went with Brian.
Okay, Cody, your vote doesn't count, but where would you have gone and why?
Counts to me, damn it. Okay.
Still love you, but
I wish someone wouldn't have said what they said at the end of this fight because, and just left it to the imagination because I've been doing this a while. I think I think you can find anywhere on the fence of how people feel about like a written closing or written opening, like how people interpret those and how they feel. Arguably one of the best openings I've ever heard in debate. Set the groundwork, set up his character, did everything he was supposed to. I went with Brian and I put please retire again because I would like him to leave the division. I don't want him here anymore. It was cool. It was a fun idea. But the way he was able to set it up, and then I thought he was going to I'm glad he kind of like smacked Cam in the face with it, because when it was like, oh, water monster, that's cool, we've seen that before. He's like, well, it's not supposed to be innovative. Well, if you see something enough, it loses its cool factor, which I think helped a lot. And then every shot, he just like, yeah, because she doesn't fit in the world. That's why she changes. Like, that's why it shows like where she's at and what she doesn't belong in that world. And then when it was like countering, it was like, oh, it's white background, it's white back, and it's like, yeah, but that just shows where how as it gets warmer, it changes. Like how it was able to design and where it was going. And I don't think Cam did anything more to get past what the overall character design of the water monster for me. Like, yeah, it was water, but like thing. And I'm Team Kirk. I hate the cool questions, but hey, it was an interesting fight. It made it fun. It's fun to see competitors try to determine what cool actually is. So it was fun.
I will say, as a showrunner of this program and a judge, I think it's really interesting that in the last few weeks we've like you have players who just like have their categories. Cameron has a Narnia, and you always kind of anticipate it, but like Joe loses a Bond, Rue lost a Bad Boys question, and now Cameron loses Narnia. It's shit's not always normal, boys.
Coolness is, and B, Brian took the thing I wanted.
What? Say it again. What?
A, I don't know what coolness is, and B, Brian took the pick I wanted. When
that's fair. That's
when
fair.
he picked the White Witch, I messaged a group chat where I was running ideas and said, "Well, shit." He got the obvious.
It was bad when the one you want. Not fun when the rabbit has the gun.
Literally, you asked the question. I was like, "Well, there's the White Witch, and."
Mr. Tumnus. Anyway, so we'll take you guys out. All right, we're going to get into the next question. This was drafted by Brian. It's in the category of the animation. I am very excited about this one because I recently watched all of these movies again. So what is the most impressive animation moment from a Leica film? Brian, you're kicking this off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Leica has brought stop motion animation to a whole nother level, and all their films are beautifully done. But my opponent and I agree on one thing, that Paranorman represents the best of Leica. But the moment that is most impressive, the one that shows off what they can truly do in the medium, is after Aggie starts to rage and Norman is trying to talk her down. Norman is thrown to and fro. He tries to reach her, leaping from object to object, floating in the air. Rocks and trees react with lifelike physics and motion in stop motion animation. As he lands and pushes off each one, the force and wind emanating from Aggie blows him back and causes his individual hairs to blow wildly in the wind, and his clothing ripples and thrashes. You feel the force of the wind as he struggles to hold on and move forward. You can feel the gravity as he hangs over the void. And most importantly, you can feel the emotions going on. Meanwhile, Aggie appears charged up with electricity flowing through her body. There's like underlighting in the animation. You see her at times struggling to split in two, representing her inner turmoil and emotional conflicts. And even in the background, the ethereal dimension which takes place is beautiful. All of this is achieved in stop motion animation. It's just an amazing showcase of what animation is capable of.
Time. All right, we're going to bring in Cameron. Cameron, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I looked at this in a very weird way, and we'll see if this pays off for me. But I think one of the most impressive things that Leica is able to do as a studio is master its use of light and shadow in ways that you don't even always notice until it's really something you're looking for. And you find that they've made a scene that is beautiful and impactful and rivals what can be done even in live action. And so I chose The Trial of Aggie, also from Paranorman. I think the way that it uses light, shadows, angles, like from an actual cinematographic technique is incredibly impressive. It builds this sense of fear, this sense of dread, this sense of being shrunken for Norman and Aggie. It has this great, fantastic reveal. It uses the facial expressions of the characters, just these lifeless dolls as they should be on the surface, but it uses them to create something that's real, that's deeply impressive. It creates a realized sweeping 360 space that in this small place gives you the claustrophobia. It has the switch. It has
time.
Sorry.
Okay. We're going to bring in Brian. 5 minute free form when one of you starts talking.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the biggest knock that I have against the scene that you have is when we're talking about being impressive, especially from a Leica standpoint. Leica is all about the stop motion, and your scene is riddled with CGI overlay that really undercuts everything that's in it.
There is CGI there to enhance things. Yes, I mean sometimes the lighting and smoke and things like that they do, yes, through CGI animation, just like they had to do with like teardrops running down the cheek in yours. But the thing is, the question is most impressive animation moment. And when you're talking lighting and shadows and things like that, those are great cinematography moments. Even in stop motion, it's cinematography and lighting. That is not animation. This is best animation moment. And so, I mean, you have your character like Aggie standing on trial against a black background, Norman standing alone watching, also in the dark. The judge is talking with just the darkness behind him. And the lighting might help, it might serve the story, but the lighting is not animation.
I think at the end of the day, though, the lighting is used in the animation. It makes the animation a little more impressive. If you want to talk about like how the lighting doesn't count, your whole thing is this swirling storm made of light. If the lighting doesn't count, then your whole thing just becomes functionally irrelevant. At the end of the day, the CG, the overlay, it takes away from the impressive nature. When in my scene, you have the practical effects, the tear is done practically in that sequence. You have when she goes to have her burst at the end, it's not this CGI overlay, it's a light from within her model that is being turned on and used. And it's a really impressive thing that we've never seen in stop motion before or since, to have that innovative and impressive inner lighting of a model.
I think you're overplaying the CGI overlay because, like I said, there are some smoke effects and things like that, but that's it. In my scene, you have, like I said, realistic physics and realistic gravity, things like that are very hard to do in stop motion. When you see the wind blowing fiercely, you see ripples in his clothes as they're moving, and that kind of thing is usually in most stop motion animation. They wouldn't even bother trying to do something like that, or they would do it very simplistically. But here they take great detail because it is Leica, and they do a great job. And so the animation and what makes this feel practical makes you feel real, which is what stop motion is great at, is feeling tangible and real. It's done so well in the animation that it makes you feel even more involved in the scene.
See, but I think the thing is that for every somewhat impressive thing that it does with like the ripple of the clothing and everything, there's things that are less impressive. You have the lazy first person shot moving towards the tree of just it's moving slightly closer. There's nothing super impressive about it. There's a lot of choice of when to and not to do of when to and not to move things that frankly seems out of place. At the end of the day, the distracting nature of the animation, I think you're really underselling just how much CG there is. She is fully overlaid. The lights, the lightning coming off of her, the spectral nature of her, the wind blowing through the scene that you said is super impressive, that all visually is achieved through the use of CGI.
Well, it's a good question. It's good that the question then isn't strictly best stop motion animation. It's most impressive animation moment, which would include any traditional animation, any stop motion animation, any CGI animation that comes together to work together, to implement all those things together to make the best scene. In yours, you talked about things like the lighting that comes out from within her and how that's impressive. Mine has that same thing happening in my scene, as well as the light going through the tree as she charges it up and it explodes. My scene has basically everything your scene has and more. And as far as the slow zooming in being unimpressive, how is that different than a still camera sitting there watching a judge talk in the dark?
See, the thing is, I think you're misunderstanding what is impressive about Aggie's trial. The thing that's impressive is not that it's this massive visual spectacle. The thing that makes it impressive is that they are able to take these dolls, this frankly seemingly mundane situation, and make it so powerful, make it so dark, give the claustrophobia, give the lights, give the shadows, give the emotion. And they are able to turn this animated film with these claymation dolls and turn this entire sequence into something that feels real, that feels like something ripped straight out of a live action film that could be done so incredibly well. And you're watching it play out all in real time. And it's this beautiful, visually stunning moment.
But again, you're talking about the lighting and the shadows, which are done very well, but those are not animation. That is a different aspect of the scene. If we're talking impressive animation, it's what animation can do that blows you away. That's like, wow, I haven't seen animation, the actual animation of anything, do anything like this before. Your scene is a great scene. It's a good emotional moment. And I think it's very well done for what they do for that scene to set the tone, to set the emotions of that scene. But animation is not what makes that moment memorable.
I think at the end of the, like, you're continually detracting that light and camera is not part of animation, and stop motion it is.
Time. Okay, we're gonna start with Cameron. Cameron, you get 1 minute to close when you start talking.
Light and camera in stop motion is just a part of animation as it is in traditional animation. You have seen, I guarantee you there's 3D movies you've seen where the scenes are not lit and you look at it and you say, the animation is shitty. Just watch Shark Tale. The way it masters light, the way it masters shadow, the way it masters space, the way it masters emotion, the way it has these really, really interesting practical effects where you have the light coming out from within Agatha, not manifested as this big sweeping CG thing, distracting and taking around from her. At the end of the day, I don't think Brian's scene is impressive because from a studio like Leica, it is lazy. It is lazy, uninteresting, and unimpressive work to detract from your main selling point as a studio, as a movie, and get rid of that in favor of CG. To be impressive, put in the work. Do it practically and do it right, or don't do it at all. It is lazy. It is distracting. It gets in the way of the beautiful things that we want. Whereas the scene where Aggie is on trial is done entirely practically, and it looks beautiful, incredible, and like film.
Time. Okay, we're going to move over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
What makes stop motion animation, the medium, so uniquely effective is that feeling of being tangible, of being real. And when you can sell that reality with subtle things like the clothing movement in the wind and weight and realistic physics, and yes, with stop motion, although enhanced with other kinds of animation, which is all part of the animation, it's all the more effective and impressive because those details are so painstakingly difficult and laborious to do in stop motion. Most studios wouldn't bother with that kind of detail, but Leica is not like most studios. So in the question of what's the most impressive animation moment, not the most emotional moment, not the best story moment, but the most impressive animation, my scene has everything you could ask for. It's got everything your scene has and more, and so much more. Animation is impressive when it can convey emotion, but when it can include that and then top that by also using everything in the shot, foreground and background, to also convey physicality and make it feel real, that's when animation's at its most impressive. And mine manages to use all different styles of animation, from stop motion to CGI to traditional animation. It blends all those. It uses all the tools it has to make the most impressive scene.
Impressive scene. Strike it from the record. Let's bring in the judges.
You're striking it for the record?
Brian,
yes, yeah, you must do whatever.
I have to change everything.
Well, if you strike the words impressive scene from the most impressive scene question, that's a problem.
We'll strike those words.
Some would say.
In my scene is bad. Please.
You know, the silence is a lot worse when you're on this side of the table. Just saying.
It really is.
Welcome to my world.
Right, you start to understand why I awkwardly talk way too much in between rounds.
Oh, never.
Also, there's something I'll mention once the votes are in that I didn't mention in the green room, but it's functionally irrelevant. But I don't know if it's a thing Tim knows.
All right. I know Mark likes to stay cammed off until he's made a decision. It's a new thing for him, but I hate it.
Really, he's just taking off his pants.
That would be awesome.
Hey, if only the top half is on camera.
You're assuming any one of us are wearing them right now.
Yeah. I've got a blanket. You don't know what's under there. It's my legs.
I've got a Dune popcorn bucket. It's
oh, jeez.
I have one of those right over there.
Of all the people to make a reference to that, I don't think Brian was who I expected.
No, I definitely
AMC frequenter. What are you talking about? Okay, so Cody, you're kicking this one off.
There was a moment in this fight. I was waiting for it. It was basically like when there's an obnoxious person in like a bar or whatever, and like they're yapping, and they're like, "I'm warning you," and they yap again. "I'm warning you," one more time. Just straight sucker punch in the mouth. That was Brian to Cam. Cam, regardless of where the argument went, Cam treated this like a purist of Leica. Fuck your CGI. It's trash. It doesn't belong in this. You do not. How dare you use it? But the question is impressive animation. CGI was a form of the animation. And Brian passed it and said, I don't think that really matters. There's a little bit, whatever. I think you're overselling. I think there's a lot more than you're letting on. Okay, well, the question's here. And as soon as he said that, that was the punch. And then Cam went on this, like, at his closing, he spent the thing, he was like, it's lazy, it's cheap, it's blah, blah. It doesn't matter how cheap or lazy it is. You pitched a lighting question, which I didn't like the takedown of Brian's by saying, I don't think that's a lot of animation. I think that's saying, I think you can have both. I think both create it. But I think Brian won it pretty handily for me because it just didn't, like, there was just like, they both started with practical. It had to be practical. And then Brian was like, well, I'm not getting anywhere because he's going to use a lot of CGI. So what I'm going to say is it's every animation. Just because it comes from Leica Studio doesn't mean it has to be stop motion animation. It could be any animation. And no, that was it for me. Brian won.
Okay.
That's a Tim disagree with Cody statement if I've ever heard one.
I'm going next. I watched a stop motion film today. It wasn't from Leica. I watched Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I haven't logged it yet, though, because I'm still debating if I want to go higher or not. Point being.
Plus, I've never seen these movies. I just want on the record. I never saw this movie. I hate stop motion.
You've never seen Paranorman?
No, I hate stop motion.
Dude,
So.
Oh, I think you would like this movie.
Yeah, bring him on a round table. Okay.
You saw Kubo.
Let's keep going.
Anyway, I thought this was good, but weird. I went with Brian. This was close, and I thought that Cameron, in the beginning with the CGI thing, was winning me. I agree that Brian's like, well, it's just animation, so like go fuck yourself. It's not what he said. Was a good punch, and I agree with Cody in that it was a good punch. I don't think it was the end all be all for me. When writing the question, I was thinking from the perspective of like the stop motion, because that's what Leica is known for. And I think Cameron picked up on that. But at the end of the day, when I write the question, it doesn't always go the way that I anticipated. And I think that Brian did a really good job, not necessarily tearing down Cameron's scene, but taking Cameron's punches against Brian's scene and tearing those down. If I'm being honest, I don't think Brian actually did a great job of attacking Cameron. I think he just did a really good job of defending himself and upping his pick. I've seen Paranorman 3-4 times, and I don't remember these scenes. It's a movie I really like, but I don't remember much of it. And I don't remember the scenes very well. I vaguely remember Cameron's, but the way that they were described and the way that Brian was able to defend himself and up his, I thought worked a lot. And it made me give him the point. Mark, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and
Yeah, we kind of feel like we got into a little bit of the weeds of a kind of nitpicky stuff of like kind of what was like, well, was this impressive? Like that animation, like we kind of went into that a lot here. But when we just kind of go to the question, what was the most impressive? I had to go with Brian on this one. I mean, I think he made all those points. He made all the points he needed to pretty well. Kind of same with Cody. I think once it came down to the end, just kind of hit him with what the question actually was, and then I guess we'll put the patent. We don't hate you, Cameron. I swear, even though
no, it's fine. When I read I had the question wrong in my brain when I submitted my answer. Where I thought it was because I have been like, yeah, most impressive Leica moment. Great. Forgot the word animation was in the question, so I was like, okay, cool. This is just a weird way to phrase what the best moment in a Leica would be.
Been there.
And then far too late, I realized what the question actually was, but I was like, it's kind of too late, and I'm stuck with my pick. So, oops.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that means that
Oh,
Brian
shit,
is up 2-0. Cameron does need to hit this next one in order to send it to the fourth question. But he did draft this category. So the category is coming of age. And the question is, which post 2010's coming of age film has the most likable lead character? Cameron, you're kicking this off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
So the film and the character I picked is Duncan from the Way, Way Back. I think at the end of the day, what makes a person very likable is it's someone you want to root for. It's someone you sympathize with, that you empathize with, that you want to see succeed and you want the best for. And I think truly Duncan embodies that more than anyone else. He is who we've all felt like at some point or another. He is this shy kid who's not sure of his place in the world, who is being frankly put down by the people around him who we clearly know are wrong, because he's just a kid and that's all he's trying to be. You get to see him grow, become more confident, but he never becomes a mean person, a hateful person. He never puts anyone down in his way. He's just an underdog being belittled and put down and rising up against that and becoming who he truly is. He makes time to be kind to the people around him, like Peter. He stands up and defends the people that he cares about, like his mom, when he discovers that his mom is being cheated on. He is genuine. He is himself, even if he's not the most confident in who he is. And it just takes a push to get him out of his shell. And that's exactly what makes him likable.
Time. Okay. We're going to move over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
So movie history and real history is full of good people raised in bad circumstances. And through no fault of his own, 10-year-old Jojo Betzler lives in Nazi Germany. No doubt my opponent will jump on the fact that Jojo is a Nazi to call him unlikable, but he isn't. He was compelled by law, like all children his age, to join those junior ranks of the Hitler Youth. And while they do try to indoctrinate him with their hatred and evil and beliefs, Jojo still manages to remain happy, funny, sweet, precocious young boy with friends and imagination and wonderful relationship with his mother, who is his whole world. The fact that he's able to keep this positive attitude while bombarded with hateful propaganda just makes him even more likable. He has his imaginary friend who, yes, is Adolf Hitler. But judging by the version in his mind, Jojo sees Hitler as a buffoon, this incompetent idiot, and it makes him even more likable knowing that he sees through Hitler's bullshit and uses him instead almost more for entertainment. When he's confronted with Elsa, he tries to keep up the front that he's been taught, but it's easily apparent that even he doesn't believe the things he says. He protects her and in his secret and helps keep her alive even. And by the end of the movie, when you see him dancing in the street, you can't help but smile.
Time. Okay. Hey, I've seen both of these films many times. 5 minute free form when one of you starts talking.
So Duncan, I agree with most everything you said. You sympathize with him, you empathize with him, you root for him, you want to see him get a win, but that doesn't make him likable. It just kind of makes him sad and pathetic. You can still sympathize with someone and not really find them likable. I found him to be really kind of annoying through the movie because he pouts through most of the movie. He starts out the movie with a chip on his shoulder, and granted, it's understandable why he has the chip on his shoulder from the way like Steve Carell and these people are treating him, but it doesn't make him likable just because of his situation.
See, but the thing is, I think he is still inherently likable. We see as the events of the movie go on, he is this genuine, nice, kind person who stands up for the people that are put down. He defends the people who matter to him and that he cares about. And he does know how to have fun. He just needs to be put out of his shell. Look, you said it in your opening. I'm going to pounce on the fact that Jojo is a Nazi. Because as much as you can say everyone was at the time, that doesn't excuse the beliefs. You can say, oh, it was mandatory. He was excited to go to Hitler Youth Camp. You're saying, oh, his version of Hitler is a buffoon. That's not his opinion of Hitler. That is Taika Waititi's satirical views that you're projecting onto the character when it's clear that the character has this idolization, but is being played satirical to us, not to him.
The whole idea that Duncan is sympathetic, JoJo is a more sympathetic character even than Duncan. He's growing up in Nazi Germany, first of all, being taught this hate. He's injured and scarred by a grenade. His mother is hung in the public square, and so all the time we are rooting for him. We want to see him win. We want to see him basically escape the grasp of this Nazi Germany. As far as JoJo goes, I mean, he's not excited to go. In the opening scene, when he's getting set for his first day of the young Volk, the young Hitler Youth, he stops and he says with this nervous, he says, "I don't think I can do this." And then as he goes there, when you see him when they're doing like the book burning, he hesitates. He knows what they're doing is wrong. You can see that he is not one of these people. He does not believe this hate.
See, but the thing is, he still actively participates. He gets excited when they say, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to throw grenades. You talk about the scar on his face. It's because he's way too gung-ho to participate in these things. As well, even when he's not just at that camp, he threatens and literally attempts to stab a young Jewish girl with a knife. He writes a deeply anti-Semitic book and gives it to the members of the Gestapo. He is also shown mostly to begin gaining his sympathies towards Elsa because it is established that he has a crush on her. He finds her attractive, and even in doing so, then lies and starts writing letters to manipulate her and hurt her feelings, saying that her fiance is dead and died in the war and doesn't love her anymore.
But it's likable because we know more than these characters know. We can tell. I mean, you can tell when he's writing that book. First of all, it's just cartoonishly. It's comedy with the things he's put in that book, and no one actually believes those things. And he's writing it because he wants to impress the people above him. He's trying to fit in this world. That's why he's doing those things. As far as when he stabs her in the shoulder, his mother has just died, and he's lashing out. And the one person that has put her in this position is he thinks about the fact that she was helping out the Jews. So he lashes out at her. Yes. But then he ends up crying because he didn't actually hate her. We know that he doesn't hate her. We know that he likes her, and you can tell that by the end of the thing. But he is a good kid. He can't hurt anyone. He couldn't even hurt a rabbit. That's how he got the name Jojo Rabbit, because he could not even hurt a rabbit.
See, but the thing is, he doesn't hurt a rabbit, but as we've established, he's willing to hurt a human. You also say, oh, he has this great relationship with his mother. No, he doesn't. They are yelling at each other and fighting all the time. At the dinner table, they have a massive confrontation that is clearly antagonistic because he's angry that his dad left and is taking all of it out on her, and he is being deeply not kind and unkind. Duncan at all times is defending the people around him that are good to him and that are good people. He is standing up for himself, even if it takes time and energy for him to get to that point. He is rootable. He is likable. He's the underdog. He takes matters into his own hands. And yeah, the circumstances he's overcoming are a shitty stepdad as opposed to an entire fascist organization. That doesn't make him less likable. That makes the circumstances around JoJo just more difficult, but he's still deeply likable through all of it.
You get the whole last minute here. But one of the things that you said was how Duncan is defending his mom. In the scene where he's defending his mom, he's also yelling at his mom. He's screaming at his mom why she's letting these things happen. So he is not nice to everyone around him. He lashes out just as much as JoJo does. And your character might seem likable when juxtaposed with the other characters in this movie, because everybody's dysfunctional and unlikable in there, especially Steve Carell's douche. But that doesn't mean he's likable. It just means there's a very low bar in your movie for likability. But even throwing that curve off is Sam Rockwell's Owen, because he's the most likable character in the film. And when you and it shows and makes any likable Duncan has look like nothing.
I mean, in terms of juxtaposition, you can't say the juxtaposition helps my character when yours is up against Nazis.
Time. We're going to Brian first. Brian, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
JoJo represents innocence in an awful situation and hope for those who were taught hate, and he represents the best in children who can stay true to themselves and not give in to the pressures of the world. He's an innocent kid surviving in a world of lies. He's a likable kid. He's cute. He's funny. He's endearing. He's respectful. He's polite. He loves his mother and he wants to make her proud. I can't imagine anyone watching this movie and at the end saying they don't find JoJo likable. Even Elsa, who pretended to hate and even got stabbed at one point, she liked him. Captain Klesendorf saw who he really was, and he liked him, and he protected the secret when he knew they were lying. And the audience loves him. You can like the movie the way back, but that doesn't mean Duncan is a likable character. Sympathetic? Absolutely. He's someone you feel sorry for and you want him to get a win, but that doesn't equal likability. It just makes him an underdog and kind of a sad person. Watching him pout through the whole movie, except when he's simping for a girl way out of his league or lashing out at his mom, doesn't make him likable. It just makes him sad.
Okay, ending about 10 seconds early. We're going to move over to Cameron. Cameron, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
We as human beings are hardwired to root for the underdog, and Duncan is the underdog that we can relate to. We like because we've been him. We like him because at some point in our lives, we've had someone come up to us and say, you know what, I think you're not good enough. And we sit there and we think, you know what, I am. And we like him because he represents us, and he has the fortitude and the strength to not let that tear him down, but to build himself up and go against it. Jojo is a hateful, evil person for a large portion of the movie. You say his book is cartoonish. Cartoonish evil is still evil. That's what the entire party was all about. If we want to talk about people doing things for him, there's a difference between protecting his innocence and actually liking him. Yeah, he's just a kid. Saying he's just a kid does not mean he's likable. It means that he's impressionable. Even when the war ends and he is disillusioned, he is still selfish. He lies to Elsa to keep her in his house. He is a bad friend. He is a bad son. He does these evil things. He threatens people. He hurts people. And at the end of the day, his beliefs and his hatred make him unlikable as a person.
Time.
I will say, whichever way this goes, I knew Jojo Rabbit was a giant roll of the dice.
I will save my comments for the once the votes are done.
Just to let both players know, I don't write because I write both names and then I erase one. So that's why I come out. So I don't predetermine anything.
I used to do that.
Yeah, it's just easier because I always write and then somebody can see or something. I'm just like, eh. There's only 2 names I can have on this board, so it's easier.
The winner is Tim.
Sometimes I put tie. Can I put a tie?
No.
Okay, well, guess what? Has anybody asked you that question before?
No.
Now they have.
What?
Thank you. Across the
Because
rule book.
All right,
what
I'm
if
ready.
it's like a tie, and then the other vote too. Like, yeah, that was unimportant. You just-
Drop the attitude, Mark. Drop
Mark,
the
are you ready? Jesus Christ.
Yes, I am ready.
Okay, great. Go ahead. I love you.
attitude. He does.
You know, feel like on its head, I think this was kind of a close fight, and then it kind of as we kind of went along, it felt like, this fight feels like kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts, and because just I feel like the longer this fight went on, just more and more and more things came up. Because I think you kind of see where I'm going. I went with Cam. It just, like, I think it would have been very easy to just harp, oh, he's a Nazi. And then Cam just kept firing examples at Brian. And at some point, I mean, it just outweighs. Like, there isn't too much of an argument here.
Stop, he's dead already.
I went with Cam on this one.
Cody.
Well said, Mark. You're very astute. I still think the same thing. So one, I went with Cam. I'll just get it out of the way. I went with Cam. I think when I saw it, I was like Jojo Rabbit versus thing. I was like, that's a choice. Like, but how can you sell it? Because I've seen a lot of picks that I think are bad come in and just sweep. It was just like everything that, and Brian's closing was super strong. Like, it was super strong. But he was also having to be super strong in that closing. Like, because, like, he picked such a hard one. He's like, everybody around him. Well, everybody around Jojo's a Nazi, so please tell me why one's more likable than the other. It was just like everything kept piling, and, like, Brian's like, get the fuck off me, basically. I picked it. Is this time up already? And he was, like, needing every minute to sell why Jojo. And I think he did a good job. But at the end of the day, nerdy, sad character versus Nazi is just really hard to fight on that time. And you did what I would have done. He is going to say he's a Nazi. But when you can say he's a Nazi, it's really hard to beat that. Like, it's a Trump. Like, it's hard. So at that point, it was just like Cam just kept hitting and hitting, and was like, yeah, he's already dead. Like, It was rough. It was just a hard. It was a good pick on paper. It was just a bad. Once the fight happened, it was like, yeah, I can't overtake this.
All right, my vote doesn't count. But I also went with Cameron. I thought that I don't think that at its face value the Nazi thing technically works, because I think Brian in his opening did a really good job of explaining why that shouldn't be just like a end all be all, which I don't think it was for the other judges. But I'm saying for me it wasn't. And but I thought that Cameron did a lot beyond the gimme of he's a Nazi to support the fact that JoJo maybe wasn't the most likable. I actually think Cameron, this is a little bit of the opposite, where Cameron didn't do necessarily the best job of bringing up Duncan. He did do a good job, but it wasn't like fantastic or anything, but he did a really good job of taking down JoJo. So I went with Cameron. So Cameron wins the point and stays alive, but we are moving on to the final question of the match. And the question is coming in the category of Law and Order. The question is, what is the best scene in a Bad Boys film? So Brian, you drafted this, you're kicking off. You get to start. 1 minute when you start talking.
So Bad Boys is an action comedy franchise. That is what you're looking for when you come to see a Bad Boys film. I know Fanzone just recently covered best action scene in a Bad Boys film, so I decided to explore the comedy side with my pick. So action aside, the best scene Bad Boys is one that not only features the comedy and chemistry of the two stars, but also the one thing that is the very heart of the franchise, and that is the brotherhood between Mike and Marcus. That scene is when 15-year-old Reggie arrives at Marcus' house to take his daughter Megan out on a date. Just prior to this scene, they had been in a serious conversation where Marcus is considering transferring and ending their years-long relationship. But that's put on hold when the doorbell rings. Reggie is quiet, nervous, and petrified as Marcus puts on his angry, protective dad front, berating him with questions. Mike strolls up, playing his role of the gun-wielding Uncle Mike, drunk, angry, and fresh out of prison. And together they proceed to hilariously intimidate Reggie until Marcus' wife comes to the door and puts them in their place and puts an end to it. And after this moment of rebonding, the two laugh, they hug, and they're ready to head out to solve their case together. Both Will Smith and Martin Lawrence were at the peak of their careers at this point, and their comedy chemistry has never been more perfect. That comedy is what Bad Boys is all about, and this scene is the prime example.
Time. This is what happens when your baby wakes up. Okay, Cameron, we're moving over to you. 1 minute when you start talking.
I do not like the Bad Boys franchise. I think it is pretty unremarkable, offensive, and downright unfunny a lot of the time. So when it is able to make me care about it, I think that's incredible. And the scene I picked is Mike telling his history with Isabel to Marcus in Bad Boys for Life. This scene manages to make you care about the emotions of a character in a Bad Boys movie. Will Smith is legitimately giving a phenomenal performance in it, being able to both visually and verbally act out the pain that his character is feeling, the regret of how the woman who made him who he is today is the one coming to take that from him. The fact that the way he was when he was younger has created the worst version of him possible that is out to get him. The way it is filmed is fantastic. The lighting on Mike and Marcus, the lighting and the scenes in Isabel when we see her, it has moments of comedy. It has that bond between them, but it does so much more.
All right. 5 minute freeform when one of you starts talking.
Oh, did you point them?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is that the Reggie date scene isn't actually that funny when you look at it, especially through a modern lens. It is aged horrendously. It is two grown men harassing a teenager. They threaten to sexually assault him at one point. I'm sorry, but that's not funny when you're making these jokes towards a 15-year-old.
Yeah, I'm not worried about political correctness. Anybody knows me feels that. And it is done for comedy, and they know it's comedy, and I don't think there's any problem with it having it in a movie. But I'm not going to argue political correctness on this. All I know is that my scene is funny. It's every father's dream to do this, to answer the door for someone who's coming for your daughter with just, who the fuck are you? And then to be able to say things like, you a virgin, keep it that way. You want to protect your kid. Mike is a part of that family, everybody as much as Marcus. It's like it's his own daughter, and he's just as protective. And so to watch the two of them play off each other and do all these jokes and everything, and it just kind of reinforces their brotherhood. And at the end of the conversation, it's basically kind of rebonded them after almost breaking up.
Yeah, but the problem is all of these things that they're doing are both not just problematic, and I won't keep hammering home on that point, but I legitimately don't think it's funny. Will Smith pretending to be drunk he's doing a bad job acting wise. It's not funny. It's not believable. If you want this idea of intimidation, the scene is filmed from a lot of high angles from behind Reggie, which makes them look comedically short, which doesn't make them intimidating. It's loud. It's incoherent. You can barely hear anything Reggie's saying. It's kind of a pointless scene that means nothing towards the franchise and the movie as a whole.
Well, Reggie's mumbling because he's not an actor. He comes across as a real 15-year-old kid. He's terrified of this angry dad in his face, but he can't show his fear, or that dad would definitely not respect him and let him trust him with his daughter. And he certainly can't yell back. He has to remain stone-faced, polite, and respectful in the face of this abuse. And that high angle is just because he was taller than them, and they're doing that for comedic reasons. My problem with your scene, or a couple problems with your scene. First of all, throughout the entirety of Bad Boys for Life, Martin Lawrence just looks totally out of it. That's the one bad thing about this movie, is that his eyes are glossed over and his speech is slow and slurred to the point where I actually had to research if he had a stroke or something after I saw this movie. It's just kind of sad watching him in this film, especially when he tries to emote, and that makes it hard for me to like any scene in this film, or at least call it one of the best of the series. But my main problem with your pick is that it's too serious. Bad Boys is all about fun. Your scene grinds the movie to a halt for like a 5-minute exposition dump, and one that introduces backstory that never existed previously, which I'll get into in a minute, but you go ahead and talk.
You see, the thing is, I think you're missing the point of Bad Boys for Life when making these complaints about Martin Lawrence of, yeah, he is old. He is out of it. That's Marcus. He was retired. He doesn't want to be doing this shit anymore. He is functionally Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon of I'm too old for this shit while he's got his rigs running around doing all these crazy things. The emotional moments hit. It's not about Marcus's response to the emotional things here. It's about Mike. It's about Mike confronting who he is, the worst parts of himself, and how that not only has affected himself, but the people around him, the world. It has put people in danger, and he has created something legitimately dangerous. It also ends with the reaffirming of Mike and Marcus's relationship, which is what the series is truly about. You want to talk about what Bad Boys is about? It is about Mike and Marcus, and this is a scene that brings them back together after they have been separated for a majority of this film up to that point.
Thing is, if they want to get completely serious, that's fine, but commit to it. But even in this wannabe dramatic scene, Marcus is interrupting lines like, "You fucked a married witch," and no wonder you dress like a drug dealer. It's like, pick a tone already. Okay, now to get into it, your scene is actually bad because it doesn't even get the history and the continuity right. He says in his big speech, his big exposition dump, that 24 years ago, before he partnered up, right out of the academy, he was recruited for this. 24 years ago doesn't even take you before Bad Boys 1. There's 25 years between the movies. And in Bad Boys 1, they said they'd already been partners for 6 years at that point. So that's 31 years ago they started being partners. So, and they can't say they're fudging with the dates because their dates are confirmed on screen and on documents on computer screens that they take place in those years. So your film is not only making things up as they go along, it's actually trying to just ignore the continuity, ignoring the history of the franchise, and just like making up like it's a whole new movie, and like the 2 movies before it didn't happen.
See, but the thing is, you keep talking about, I want Bad Boys for fun. I want Bad Boys for action. The people who want that don't care about some minor continuity errors. You don't think about it because at the end of the day, the emotion, the power is what makes this moment great. It still has, you're talking about the thing that makes Bad Boys great is the comedy. It doesn't lean full into that comedy, but it still has it because you can't let this scene be this wholly serious thing because then it detracts from what makes it a Bad Boys scene. It is the perfect mix of keeping the spirit of what made Bad Boys great to some people before and moving it forwards, raising the stakes, making it personal, and making you actually care about the things that are happening, the people that are involved, and where we are going next.
But the problem is it screeches the movie to a halt. Is that you're about to go into the final act and the final battle, and they said, okay, right now, in like the last, in the last 30 seconds before we hit the final battle, we're going to give an exposition dump of stuff that never happened before, and his partner who knew him for years would have already known about.
Time. Sorry for throwing up a random 1-minute warning when your button's on the wrong thing.
I was wondering why
anyway.
I came up twice, and I was very confused.
I felt
my mouse was on the wrong thing. I apologize. Okay, so we are gonna start closings with Cameron. Cameron, you get to close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
Mike's history with Isabel is the heart of Bad Boys for Life and still acknowledges what makes the Bad Boys series what it is. It is about Mike being this flawed person, as we've seen in the first movie. It's about them being kind of these not great people, and Mike finally having to confront that in a real and true way, where it is entirely his fault, the circumstances that it is in. It finally makes the stakes of a Bad Boys movie personal. It's no longer just violence and crime for the sake of violence and crime. It is a super emotional, real, powerful moment. At the end of the day, Reggie showing up for the date, you can say, oh, it's every dad's fantasy. I'm sorry, but the scene is problematic. They want to make Mike and Marcus look intimidating, but they undercut them. You can say Reggie mumbling is realistic for a 15-year-old. I don't care if it's realistic if I'm trying to watch a movie and can't hear what anyone is saying. It is pointless. It doesn't do anything for comedy's sake because the jokes don't actually land. Will Smith is just acting drunk, not being funny or believable. They're just harassing a teenager, saying the same things over and over and over again, and it gets old fast. It's the best scene in a Bad Boys movie, not what you say the best Bad Boys scene.
Best scene, Bad Boys, not what you
I
say.
cut out a little bit.
That's fair. So I won't say strike it from the record, but Brian, 1 minute when you start talking.
So as I mentioned, Martin Lawrence appears just out of it and unable to emote convincingly in this whole movie, and it hurts his scenes, especially dramatic ones. And that alone is enough to disqualify any scene from Bad Boys for Life involving Martin from being even considered as the best scene in the entire franchise. Yours might be the most dramatic scene, but that's exactly why it doesn't fit. Your melodramatic scene, besides grounding an otherwise fun action comedy to a halt, is it not only doesn't even know the history of the characters in the franchise, but it actively gets it wrong. And it fucks up the continuity of the franchise. And if anything, it hurts the franchise. It shows it's not in touch with the rest of this franchise. Not to mention, even if the timeline worked, which it does not, as lifelong partners, Marcus would have already known all this about Mike's history. If you Google the best Bad Boys scenes, the consensus is pretty much clear. The Reggie scene will show up in every one of these lists, and most of them at the very top, because people love the comedy in it. And even if you're offended by it, not everyone has that same approach to it, and they aren't offended by this thing. My scene is all about the brotherhood of the franchise's two main characters and features the kind of dialogue and comedy chemistry between the two that is what the franchise is all about. It's part of the franchise's DNA as opposed to just a random exposition dump.
Dump. Strike it from the record. Ellie had things to say about this fight, but don't worry.
Ask a question.
You can.
Was this dictated that it couldn't have been an action scene, or is this the players deciding this?
It was not dictated.
It was not dictated.
It's a scene. It could have been any scene.
Yeah.
Okay. It just led comedy, so I was just asking questions. So I was curious.
No, I said I just chose to go comedy because I knew it actually had been asked recently. So.
Yeah, it was just like the cam led right into it too, like kind of like it was weird. I don't know. It was good. Just curious.
I didn't know that question had been asked because I don't work here.
Well, I wasn't there. I didn't hear the argument.
But I assume you were probably at least like in the green room for a time.
No, green rooms are only me and the competitors.
Fair.
It probably aired already. Okay. We're going.
It might have. I don't remember.
Oh, fuck.
I watch Fanzone when I'm at the gym, and I'm kind of out of it by the time I'm done. That's
how I am after debate.
All right. Mark and Cody, ready? Okay. Good picks. I think Bad Boys for Life is the best Bad Boys movie, personally. I like the first two a lot. Like I am a proponent of those movies. But I really, really liked the third one, and I'm super excited for Ride or Die. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I went with Brian. That says Michaels. I thought that Brian did a good job really explaining in the back. I don't want to say lore. That's stupid, but he did a good job of being like, this is why these movies work, and it's at its best in this scene. And I think that honestly, even Brian's like nitpicking of like the 24 years and the 20, like, good point to make. It didn't really work for me. I think Cameron had a really good rebuttal there of saying like the people watching Bad Boys like don't give a fuck about that. Like I'm kind of in that camp, but I think Brian did enough of really bringing up his scene and bringing down the like, okay, maybe your scene is dramatic and brings in backstory, but the performances aren't really there. And there's nothing really like super interesting about it. And Cameron kind of came to it from a perspective of like, well, these movies are bad, and so this is the least like bad scene. And it didn't totally work for me.
Hey, just because it's true doesn't mean you can call out my philosophy like that.
I mean, that's fair. Mark, your vote.
Yeah, it's not really good leading up on this. I can just mumble a little bit. I look like I was trying to keep it brought down. No, my phone fucked up. Now I gotta wait for it to do a thing. Well, you see the BR. It is a BR. There it is, Brian. Okay, I went with Brian. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Brian brought up the right points. I think smash cam scene, and I think ultimately he also brought up at least the strengths of his scene. It outlines exactly what the Bad Boys movies are, the relationship between the characters. Like it just, I think he outlines it perfectly. I think he defended it pretty well. Smash Cam's answer, yeah. So I had to go with Brian.
Okay, Cody, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
I think it was interesting because when both topics were released, I said, this is really interesting that these are the choices from Bad Boys because I think there are great scenes, but like they both pick scenes that don't involve like any action, just them like having conversations, which is fine. It just wouldn't be my choices. And when both answers were saying right before we brought both people back on, I was like, well, I have Cam's opening statement. Yours hasn't aged well. It's problematic. It has problems, blah, blah. Brian Little says, I'm not fucking arguing with that shit. And Cam, like, backed off of it. Like, even if Brian's not going to meet you in the octagon, at least punch him in the mouth with it as many times as you can because it's like, Brian, like, he conceded. Like, he's like, fine, if you're not going to argue, I won't. But, like, if that's what you believe, I would just put my foot down and be like, no, please explain to me why it's 15-year-old and blah, blah. But Brian's like, yeah, I don't fight that shit and fuck off. And Cam's like, all right, well, we'll move to something else. And then Brian's like, I got something in my bag. The continuity is wrong. And I'm like, fuck off. It's Bad Boys. They don't even know what they're fucking doing. Like, they don't even remember what they said in the last movie. Michael Bay was in charge of this shit. Like, there's so much he could have done, but it didn't work fully. But Brian just, like, went for me because Cam kind of, like, backed off of, like, his main takedowns because Brian said, fuck it, I ain't doing it. So, well, Brian. It was a good fight, though.
All right, well, that means your winner is Brian Michaels. We're going to go into post-match interviews. We're going to start with Cameron Holtzman. Cameron, great match. I think it's 3-1 is tough, but also I think a clean sweep on a category is always impressive. And I think you did a really great job tonight. How are you feeling post-match here?
Sorry, you cut out entirely on that question. Could you repeat all of the words?
I said nice things about you, and now I'm saying, how do you feel about the match?
Okay. Yeah, I still feel okay. Like at the end of the day, I knew I was in for some uphill battles on everything that wasn't the Jojo Rabbit fight, frankly.
That's fair.
That one, I came in, I was like, I gotta at least win that one. If I somehow lose this one, I might have to retire from this division because that's just how do you fumble that bag so hard. But no, yeah, like I knew Brian was gonna be serious, and like Brian picked, like as I said at the beginning of my opening, I hate the Bad Boys movies. I think Bad Boys for Life is the best one because it's just not horrible like the first two are. And it is one of those things where, like, when trying to take down his scene, it's really hard for me to say things other than just like, this is terrible. I hate it. It's not funny. and trying to justify why. And Brian was like, well, I'm not going to argue it. I was like, great. I said it. You didn't take it down. That's on the record. I guess maybe I should have hit a little bit harder on that because I figured like it's out there. He didn't push back. Great. That's a point. We keep it. It stays. But no, I still feel good. Like I put up a good fight. I also like I'm in finals for the last full semester of my degree right now, which means that having a lot of time to prep debate when you have to write a like 15-page essay and have I keep forgetting that this shit is turned on. That you have to write a 15-page essay and have 3 finals in the next week and a half. Like debate kind of falls a little to the wayside there. But no, I feel good. Brian played fantastic. I'll be back whenever you have me.
Yeah, we will be definitely having you back, Cameron. Great job on the match. I thought you played really great. But we are going to move over to the winner tonight, Brian Michaels. You're coming in at the 7 seed, but that was nasty. 3-1, and 3 of them were clean sweeps. How are you feeling, man?
Relief more than anything else. I came into this debate thinking I want to win 3 or I want to lose 3. I don't want to go to speed round. I fucking hate speed round. So once I won the second one, I was kind of like, fuck. But I mean, it worked out in the end. I think I was helped by the fact that in Narnia, there's really only one good pick. Because if he had picked the witch, if he'd gotten to pick first, I'd have been screwed because there's nothing interesting in those movies at all. And apparently he misunderstood the animation question when he first answered it, which might have helped me a little bit on that one. But I mean, obviously you did a great job. I do think I was surprised as Cody that he didn't keep punching me on the bad boys question because I don't really have a defense for that except that I don't give a shit. So I was glad that he backed off of that because I would have been treading water trying to defend against that. But I had a good time. I'm glad at least the first one's back, but I'm sure they're only going to get worse from here. We'll see how much harder it gets.
Yeah, Brian, your next match, you're moving on to round number 2. You're going to be playing the winner of the match from 2 weeks ago. Full transparency, we haven't shot it yet. We're shooting it in a few days here, but you're going up against the winner of Bill Carriola and Nazario Montenegro.
Yeah, they're. I'll say both of their styles are going to be tough for me. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that match.
I look for very interesting picks, though. Very interesting picks, I bet.
Yeah, I'm sure you're gonna get to watch some interesting stuff, or maybe not watch, like you didn't watch the Narnia. But good stuff. Who knows? Brian, congrats on the win. We'll see you back in round number 2, and let's get final thoughts, starting with Cody.
Yeah, insane. I'm gonna be nice. It's hard when you play debate, when you come in here and you have to prep and you have to do stuff. It's a task. I put everybody that at least takes it seriously and does their best. I think Brian, this might be the most impressive Fanzone win in a very long time. We don't even put into the thing that basically Cameron got 3 picks in this fight because Cam is a huge stop motion fan, and got first pick on a stop motion thing. Read the question wrong, is what it is, but like got the overall first pick on a thing that they're strong in, and then got to pick 2 other categories. Brian kind of like put himself in the back and well, I don't know if he didn't know Cam liked it or what it was, but for Brian to be able to come in and then sweep things, listen, you can go back to the judging sign anytime you'd like. Like I have respect for you, but get the hell out of the debating field. I do not want to face you at all. And Cam's good, but I mean, hey, if life's busy, don't compete is what my advice to anybody is. Like, just don't, because I'd rather you come in and actually be able to fight. But good job, Brian. Like, hats off to you. Like, I can't wait. Nazario and Bill versus him. Sign me up. I will watch that any day of the week.
Yeah, I believe the 3 of us are judging that too, so it's going to be nasty to see how that one goes. But Mark, your thoughts, final thoughts on the match? You're muted.
I was
Oh, there
about
you
to
go.
talk, and I saw it, and I'm like, oh, I'm about to make a fumble here. Yeah, no, this is a good one. I kind of echo a lot of what Cody said. It more so on the line of, like, Brian's been away for a while, and he went up against a very seasoned competitor, and honestly made it look easy. Like, and it wasn't like Cameron had a bad day either. He prodded, and Brian just still showed what he had. And I mean, the road doesn't get any easier for him. I mean, he's going up against. He'll have to face one of two very good competitors again, and
Title contending players. Yeah.
but yeah, it's not. I mean, if he plays like he did today, I mean, we're in for a good one again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you to Cody. Thank you to Mark for judging. Thank you to Brian and Cameron for playing. I have been Tim. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next one. Bye.
There we go. Thank you very much. Please come again. We have a lot more groceries.